Unit 9, Lesson 1, Introduction to Active Nonviolence. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conflict Resolution and Peacemaking, the class that teaches you how to manage interpersonal conflict and drama for yourself and others. I'm your instructor, David Lowry. Welcome to a new unit. In this final series of lessons, we will discuss the peacemaker concept of active nonviolence. Almost everyone has heard of Gandhi or Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and their nonviolent approach to bring about social change. But most don't know the reasons behind the process or the techniques used by these men. We intend to examine this critical tool for peacemakers. Throughout the course, we have provided you with theories and information that help you understand the nature of conflict and provide you with methods and techniques for making peace between yourself and others. Over and again, we've said it is vital that we work and communicate relationally with others. We've stressed the importance of finding a third way rather than resorting to attacks or running away from conflicts and difficulties. However, sometimes the source of our conflict is more extensive than some interpersonal event. It results from social or systemic injustices. Consider the situation of these three people. Malala Yousafzai. Malala was a young Pakistani woman who believed that education was a right of all young men and women, even though there was extreme pressure from the Taliban in her village to close the school and deny young women the right to a formal education. On October 9, 2012, a gunman shot Yousafzai as she was traveling home from school. Malala continued to speak on the importance of education and won a Nobel Prize at the age of 17 for doing so. Martin Luther King Jr. studied and trained to be a minister. According to him, he had no intention of seeking a career in social justice and activism. When members of his congregation asked if he would consider speaking on their behalf about various matters of concern, he agreed to do so, and thus his civil rights career was launched. In 1964, Dr. King received the Nobel Prize for his dynamic leadership of the civil rights movement and steadfast commitment to achieving racial justice through nonviolent action. Rigoberto Menchu Tum was born in a small Mayan community in Guatemala. As a young girl, she traveled with her father to different villages and was encouraged to organize. During the brutal civil war in her country, more than 200,000 Guatemalans were murdered and 1 million people were displaced. Rigoberta's family spoke against the governmental slaughters. Sadly, her father and brother were killed. In her exile, Rigoberta continued to speak publicly against government atrocities. In 1992, she received the Nobel Peace Prize for her social justice work on behalf of the indigenous peoples. As the examples of these three people show, sometimes, no matter what one does, the significant roadblock of injustice looms before them. It's as though one is being asked to find satisfaction and peace with societal laws and norms, corporate policies, and the like, which demeans human experience by significantly favoring one group at the expense of another. It is fair to ask, what can peacemakers do in situations like this? Seeking a third way. Our approach, as always, is that one must continually seek a third way, even for problems that seem impossible to approach. Just because societal issues are overwhelming does not mean one must give in or behave in an aggressively antisocial way. Even in these situations, there are ways peacemakers may bring about much-needed change. Just because some powerful faction or majority sanction act in ways that dehumanize people does not mean that one should sit quietly by and accept their abuse and mistreatment. Peacemakers are called to be cultural change makers and influencers by creatively confronting society to change those things which harm people, places, and things. Known by various names such as nonviolence, nonviolent resistance, active nonviolence, direct action, and more, the third way for addressing large-scale political or social problems is embedded in nonviolent approaches. The power of groups. Unlike other forms of peacemaking, efforts at nonviolent resistance, active nonviolence, and direct action are best carried out with organized groups of people. Yes, one could opt to be a solitary voice in the wilderness, crying out against injustice, but one's effectiveness is increased 1,000 times over when one works with others for a common cause. Using nonviolent approaches, peacemakers create plans and public activities designed to raise social awareness about injustice in the hopes of bringing about social and political change. Nonviolence. The first and most important principle for social change we would like to introduce is nonviolence, an absolute dedication to not harming others while seeking change or fighting injustice. Some scholars, such as Venthagen, make a distinction between the terms without violence and against violence. They believe that for a movement to be genuinely nonviolent, one must not only use nonviolent means, but also hold an attitude that no violence will be used. Others, like Gandhi, viewed nonviolence as a creed or personal philosophy of life and a political strategy. There is difference between nonviolent day-to-day living and participating in nonviolent direct action designed to challenge injustice. You might think of nonviolence as the politics of ordinary people. It is an action oriented process, not passivity or inaction. Nonviolence includes nonviolent protest, nonviolent non cooperation, making it difficult for one's opponents to be efficient in maintaining their social system of power, and nonviolent interventions, such as fast, obstructions, and sit ins, which directly challenge one's opponent. General types of nonviolence. Though nonviolence is a well-studied field, people often speak of it in simplistic terms such as protesting or not hurting someone. There are many different forms and nuances of nonviolent action. There's generic nonviolence, and this is for those who don't participate in harming with others. They may do so for various religious, philosophical, or personal reasons. Interestingly, they may not always be opposed to the concept of violence, they just don't participate in it themselves. There is also pacifism. This is similar to generic nonviolence, but generally describes those who believe in the immorality of war and refuse to participate in them or other forms of international violence based on moral, ethical, or religious grounds. Finally, there are varieties of nonviolent resistance and direct action that describe people and groups who actively use specialized tactics to resist social policies and laws. Concerning this last category, we'd like to present 9 forms of nonviolent resistance and direct action as conceived by Gene Sharp. 9 forms of nonviolent direct action. Number 1, non-resistance. Various sects of people, such as the Amish and others, refuse to participate in wars or hold government offices. They pay taxes and do what the state requires so long as it doesn't interfere with their faith beliefs. Number 2, active reconciliation. This describes those who rely upon active goodwill and influence rather than coercion. They often believe that one can change others as one changes themselves. These people usually do not resort to any form of direct action. Number 3, moral resistance. As a matter of principle, it is the idea that all evil should be resisted using all available peaceful and moral means. Though direct action is not ruled out, more emphasis is placed on education, legislation, influence, and personal moral choices. Number 4, selective nonviolence. As the name implies, this form of nonviolence is directed towards specific events. For instance, many young men who refused to comply with their draft summons during the Vietnam War might well have complied with the draft during World War II. Number 5, passive resistance. In this form of nonviolence, methods of resistance are chosen not because one opposes all forms of violence, but because one believes that violent options are not likely to work. Passive resistors seek to combat practices they oppose through harassment or other passive-aggressive tactics. Number 6, peaceful resistance. Peaceful resistance is more active than passive resistance. This form of nonviolent action is based on the notion that dynamic and direct nonviolent processes are superior to violent ones. Gandhi and Martin Luther King successfully used this form of nonviolence. Number 7, nonviolent direct action. These forms of nonviolent action use a variety of tactics and approaches designed to challenge social processes or economic systems. For instance, during the civil rights era here in Oklahoma City, young Black protesters would sit in restaurants that only served white patrons. As they were asked to leave, another group of young Black men and women arrived. This went on for hours and attracted local television attention. In his letter from a Birmingham jail, Dr. Martin Luther King said, "Nonviolent direct action seeks to create such a crisis and establish such a creative tension that a community that has constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue. I must confess that I am not afraid of the word tension. I have earnestly worked and preached against violent tension. Still, there is a type of constructive tension that is necessary for growth. The purpose of direct action is to create a situation so crisis-packed that it will inevitably open the door to negotiation." Number 8 is Satyagraha. Mohandas Gandhi formulated the form of nonviolence that was based upon adherence to truth. According to Gandhi, the Satyagrahi aims at obtaining truth, and that's truth with a capital T, through love and right action, and to turn the searchlight inward to improve one's life so that they do not harm another. Satyagraha, according to Gandhi, excludes the use of violence precisely because no one is capable of knowing the absolute truth. Number 9, Nonviolent Revolution. Nonviolent revolutionaries believed that individual and social problems require extensive and systematic change. It is an action calculated to overthrow oppressive government systems and replace them with entirely different ones. The 1986 Philippines People Power Revolution and the 1989 Polish Solidarity Movement were nonviolent revolutions. Nonviolent revolution need not overthrow entire governmental systems, but systematic national processes involving human rights abuses, nuclear weapons, treatment of prisoners, and so on. There are several important reasons to choose nonviolent approaches. The most important reason is that nonviolent methods work. Social science researchers Erica Chenoweth and Maria Stevens conducted research that quantitatively analyzed 323 major violent and nonviolent resistance campaigns from 1900 to 2006. They found nonviolent movements are nearly twice as likely to achieve success or partial success than violent campaigns. According to the researchers, there were two main reasons for this. Nonviolent methods enhance its domestic and international legitimacy and encourages more broad-based participation in the resistance, which translates into increased pressure on the target. The second reason is this. Governments easily justify violent counterattacks against armed insurgents, regime violence, and so forth. But nonviolent movements are more likely to backfire against the regime if they use violent repression. Nonviolence also benefits communities. When people resort to violence against individuals and property, they have to live with the consequences and aftermath of the pain and suffering caused once the violence ends. This kind of pain and suffering lasts for generations and often contributes to a continuing cycle of violence. Nonviolence, on the other hand, creates no lasting harm. When change comes, people who were once opposed may live peaceably together again. Today, we have introduced you to the concept of nonviolence and highlighted some ways peacemakers can use it to bring about social change and justice. Nonviolence isn't some weak form of protest. It's a courageous way that peacemakers advocate for needed changes that make the world a better place. In our next podcast, we will discuss the magnificent work of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Thank you for joining us today. We encourage you to download a copy of the transcript of this program and use it to answer questions about the lesson.